My dear friend Jan, it was such a pleasure talking to you yesterday, and I'm really happy to hear that you and the family are all well. And thank you so much for accepting to participate with me in this, what we call a unilateral production. My first question is, of course, how is the embassy doing? How are my colleagues at the Swedish embassy doing? And how is it functioning? How have you integrated into this whole corona circumstances? Basically a total stop in the country. So how are you functioning as an organization, as an embassy? What are the most notable things that you would like to address to people that are traveling, are stuck to Sweden, in Egypt, going to Sweden? So what are the dynamics that are going on in the embassy?
It's really not business as usual, it's business as unusual, you could say. We have adapted our way of working to the circumstances. Part of our staff, just as in many Egyptian administrations and companies, are now working from home. Part is working from the embassy. The important thing for us has been to maintain the cohesion of the embassy, to maintain the enthusiasm among the staff despite these very special conditions. And I think that our experience so far is an excellent one, and we will remember this for the rest of our lives. In my experience, it's very important to implement the right measures at the right time to achieve the best possible impact. We have, of course, followed the recommendations of the Egyptian government to, in the best way, work against the coronavirus. We have taken all the precautions that we can, but at the same time, our task, of course, is to assist our clients, Swedish citizens, Egyptians and others who ask for the help of the embassy. So we have to strike a balance with precaution, strict precaution, but also being of help and service to those who need us. We have been very focused on the consular side of the embassy. That's very natural. I think most embassies are focusing on that. We've had excellent support from Egyptian authorities. We have managed to bring some 1,200 Swedish citizens back to Sweden after spending their holidays in Egypt. And that has gone very smoothly with the help of our Nordic friends, with the help of the EU, and not the least together with our Egyptian friends. We will see how we can engage with our Egyptian friends, how we can engage with Egypt to make the effects of the coronavirus the best possible, to see how Swedish technology, Swedish companies, Swedish know-how can benefit Egypt and the Egyptian people.
My second question to you is more of a personal question, because I want to know how you're doing and how the family is doing, and more importantly, I want to sort of get an insight of what is it like to be working from home. I mean, you are the chief executive officer of this organization, and all of a sudden now you've got to function in the confinement of your residence. I understand, of course, that ambassadors in general have to communicate globally in all cases with your ministry, with your government, even with your family. So it might not be very new to a lot of us, not necessarily just being confined at home, but you are confined in a different country. So how is this different than the usual, and how are you, coping with this working from home concept?
This is such a new experience, but also not a difficult experience. Of course, it is a difficult situation, but it makes me discover so many new things. We are so used to do things in a certain way or in a certain manner, but now we have to look at new ways of doing things, virtually. Many of the technology advances that Sweden and others have been promoting over years, for example, Skype is a Swedish invention, but there are many others in that field. now we get, in my work, be it in consular affairs, be it in my diplomatic work, we get to apply them. And we do it when we communicate with our Egyptian friends, we do it within the diplomatic community, and with our ministries and others at home. So it is a discovery for me, and I think that when this crisis, this moment of crisis is over, we will bring with us many of these new routines, these new habits into our work life. So things will not go back to what they were before. We will have found a new way out of not being able to always meet physically. On a personal level, when we are more confined, when we are staying more at home, working from home, we also start appreciating the small things in life. Things we maybe took for granted before, or maybe were too busy to notice. But I find happiness and pleasure and small joy in things that I took for granted before. And I hope also to bring that aspect of this very difficult situation with me into the future.
My third question to you is, of course, under these adverse circumstances that the whole globe is going through, we've been hearing a lot of information from the news outlets internationally, mainly about China, the United States of America, Italy, Spain, rightfully so, of course, considering the circumstances, but we want to know what's happening in Sweden. There's not that much information unless you're specifically looking for it, so I thought this would be a very good opportunity for us to get an insight of what's happening in Sweden, how are you dealing with this global catastrophe, if we're going to put it this way, and how do you foresee what is a Sweden post-corona?
I think it's important to remember that even though this crisis is global, it hits us all, but it hits us differently. And there is no size that fits all. And when it comes to Sweden, our response to this crisis has been shaped out of our history, what our society looks like. Already back in the 17th century, Sweden created very strong, very independent agencies. Agencies that were very much governed by experts in the area that they were working in. And these agencies have been instrumental in evaluating the situation when it comes to the coronavirus in Sweden, and in advising the politicians how to act. So one thing is independent agencies, expert-based. And the second thing is that Swedes in general, I think it's part of our DNA. We listen very carefully to what authorities say. Of course, not everyone follows what they say, but still people are very careful in listening to advice given to the public. So these two factors have shaped the way we have approached this virus in Sweden. We have approached it by giving guidelines when it comes to social distancing, guidelines when it comes to working from home, avoiding being too many people in one place, be it on public transportation or in public gatherings. We have given people also responsibility for their own health and their own safety and that of their fellow citizens. So people should themselves be responsible for how they act. The objective of these policies is to limit the spread of the coronavirus and to flatten the curve in the sense that we must make sure that our medical services, our social services can handle the crisis. So to make sure that there is a supply, that there is the access for people who need it to medical care. So to flatten the curve. At the same time, we have also taken great care to not overburden critical services in society. Critical services that are needed for society to work. But also at an economic level. We have decided not to shut down, not to have a lockdown, not to shut down economic activities, even though they have slowed down, of course, considerably, as all over the world. Because it's about safeguarding health, but it's also about safeguarding jobs. So all these different aspects have been very important. And finally, and I think that's a very important aspect of how we have approached this situation, that is to ease the concerns of common people. And how do you do this? Of course, people are always worried. They're worried for themselves, for their families, for their friends. But by supplying information, updates, I think we have had a transparency that people have appreciated and felt that authorities are on top of things. They are trying to do their best. We will never know until afterwards if we did exactly the right thing. No one knows. But to try to do the best thing according to the circumstances, according to the time when we take these measures, is the most responsible thing.
So thank you, Jan, again. Take care of yourself. Stay home, obviously.